Welcome to the YCNU podcast. Join us each week for engaging conversations with campus leaders, students, faculty, staff, alumni, and community members. From academics to athletics, campus life, and beyond, we cover it all. Have someone you want to hear from? Let us know. Let's explore the world of Yavapai College together.
Hello and welcome to the YCNU podcast. This is Mike Grady sitting in for Kedu Medina. The classical American musical returns to Prescott in a few weeks when the Yavapai College Performing Arts Department brings Fiddler on the Roof to the Jim and Linda Lee Performing Arts Center April 4th through 13th. This is by no means the first Broadway classic to make its way to the YC stage, as over the years, the performing arts students have made it a specialty to bring quality, large-scale musicals like Hello, Dolly, Phantom of the Opera, Chicago, Singin' in the Rain, bringing them to the local stage and doing them quite well. And today we have the director, Jim and Linda Lee, Performing Arts Center Director of Programming and Development, Dr. Craig Ralston here, to tell us about Fiddler on the Roof and so much more. Welcome, Dr. Ralston.
Morning, Michael. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So the Jim and Linda Lee Performing Arts Center, it's part of the Prescott landscape. You know, it's probably on souvenir mugs down on Montezuma somewhere. But even though it's part of the landscape, I don't think people fully appreciate all the stuff that goes on inside. You have the gorgeous auditorium, of course, and I think that's the biggest entertainment venue in Yavapai County, if I'm not.
It is in northern Arizona.
Yeah. And so you have this terrific auditorium. You play host to touring shows. You also have gallery space, musical and performance practice spaces, dance studios, tech workshop, costume shop. Give us kind of an overview of what goes on beyond the facade there.
We get up to a lot of great things, Michael. We dream big and we just jump in and create, I guess, artistic chaos in the sense of we are very adventurous. We always look forward to future years. What's the next step for us? And so we are super engaged. You know, Building 15 and Building 16, we number our buildings at Yavapai College. We collaborate together, which is the Performing Arts Department and the Performing Arts Center. And so we're very collaborative in our approach of how do we program, how do we bring arts to our community, and how do we transform our community through the arts. And so we have a great team of faculty, adjunct faculty, staff, the PAC tech team, the front of house. We're all super engaged in how do we truly touch people's lives. And so, you know, some of our biggest initiatives, Michael, are not just bringing in big artists. You know, any venue can do that. But it's how do we incorporate our community into what we do. And so the musicals are one way. Another way that I'm very passionate about bringing people in is through Cues, which is our Curtain Up education series. And so we went from maybe having 4,000 or 5,000 students in the building for programs to 12,000, 13,000. And so we raised money through different grants to bring students in for free. And so seeing 12,000, 13,000 students through the district, because we also do our performances in Camp Verde at the Philip England Performing Arts Center, seeing that many students come through our doors is just, it's such an exciting thing for me. Because as you know, we all have stories of when we were kids and how a teacher or a presentation or a performance changed our lives. And so, you know, I always choose shows that talk about or show transformation, and that's what I believe the arts does. So bringing in these kids, you know, they're so excited. They get to participate. They've learned curriculum because there's always curriculum that goes along with these shows. And then seeing these young lives come through the building is just incredible. And then the musicals, Michael, I've really focused on that because, you know, I always say this at the beginning of a show, we have students from 8 to 80 in our shows. And so when you can pull in as a community college students of all ages, you have such an interesting blend and cross-section of the culture of Yavapai County because we don't bring in talent from outside.
It's right. There's no ringers.
No, we don't hire any professionals from New York. Yeah. So, that means you're reaching a part, a wide part of the demographic. Fiddle on the Roof, which is coming up in just a couple weeks, we had almost 100 people from the community come out. So that's a thrill. People want to be part of the arts. They want to engage. They want to be here at Yavapai College. And they want to be on stage delivering great art. And so for me, when you talk about, the building and the different parts of what we do, yes, it's all thrilling and exciting and hard work, and we love it. But for me, it's that how do we engage our community? How do we bring especially those young lives into the building and get them on fire for the arts?
That's a great point. And I think a lot of theaters have programs for young audiences, and it's easy to overlook how important they are, not just for for the kids. That was always the best part of the year, the fun field trip,
Right.
But as actors and artists, we always say things like, if there's one person in the audience whose life I can change, whose life I can affect, that makes it worth it. And that's most likely in those Q's audiences. And that's where the kids are young and they come in and they're just kind of gobsmacked by what they see.
Right. Absolutely. And then what happens is we have a summer music camp. It's called Missoula Children's Theater. So we do a summer music camp. And then, when we go to auditions, like I said, lots of younger students from the community audition. And so, the last couple of years, we've had this group of teenagers who are super talented. They're in all of our shows, and now they're going to stay on and be part of our program and major in performing arts. And that's our whole goal, is how do we grow the talent? How do we keep investing in their lives? How do they come through the ranks, per se, and leave with a degree? And so it all ties together. The thing that I find really exciting, Michael, is how much our community stands behind us. And the support. I look back at the data, which is my first musical, which was 10 years ago, Secret Garden. We had maybe 1,400 folks come, attend. And to go from that to Hello Dolly, where we had over 8,000. In other words, the attendance of the community, their buy-in, their support, their wanting to be there to encourage this local talent is huge. And our donors do come alongside us, and we have many donors who truly invest in a financial way, and that makes all the difference. To be in a tough community where they don't care about arts, we wouldn't get anywhere. But we have a community that's just super supportive of us.
And I think it helps that community, and it helps develop that community when they see themselves on stage. Not just in terms of, oh, my child is in that show, but you have a big reach, especially in these large-scale shows. I think everybody in town was in Phantom. They're like, you had to do the math to have enough people left to fill the audience. But when you see that range of ages, and when you bring in those people, and there's a personal investment across both sides of the stage, that gives you a great deal of local buy-in, doesn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And Prescott has always been so supportive of the arts. And it's an unusual place. I say this often. I can't imagine a more supportive environment to have the arts flourish than in this area. Big cities, you have your little pockets, and you also have a lot more competing presenting houses. But here we really do have the support of our community.
What I've noticed through several different people who have visited the Performing Arts Center is it's unusual for its size in this community. It's a huge proscenium.
It is.
And it's in a community this small, it's unusual and in a really good way to have something that can, with an orchestra pit and a broad proscenium, that can support musicals of this scale. Was that an initial impression of yours, and was a lot of this propelled by a desire to fill that space?
Yeah, coming here 11 years ago when I first interviewed, the facilities across all of our campuses and centers are astounding. They really are. I mean, I've had artists come, who travel internationally, and they look at us and go, "What is this?" We're out in rural Arizona, and you have this incredible campus. You have dorms. you have such an incredible structure. So yeah, when I arrived and walked into the pack and went, wow, there were two Steinways sitting on the stage, and I was like, I'm a pianist, so that was like, wow, okay, we have Steinways, we have this 1,050 seat venue, and that's just top notch. And yeah, that does give you the freedom to really dream, what can we do with this kind of facility? And I think, I always say, every time we give it on the stage, I always say to the cast, we have to fill the stage because it is a big stage. And we do. We build big sets, we do big shows, and then we bring in the community to be entertained. But yeah, the facility allows us to dream and to dream bigger, which, like I said, lots of people who visit are astounded. Like, how could this be here? When in big cities, community colleges rarely have this kind of quality of facility.
Yeah. And it allows you to embrace one of the quintessential American art forms, which is the broad scale musical.
Correct.
So, and I can see where that would resonate in this community especially well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about how you fill the space a little bit, because the programming at the Jim and Linda Lee Performing Arts Center is multifaceted. Wow, that's hard to say in the morning. Multifaceted. Let's talk about the season.
Sure.
Every year, about 20 shows, maybe a couple more.
Sure.
Give us a characterization of what you look for and what you try to, how you populate that season.
Yeah, that's a great question, Michael. So, we are primarily an educational institution first. And so my heart has always been in how do we enhance that educational process. And so I always come back to that mission, which is how are we teaching? How are we instructing? How are we helping people to grow? So, my philosophy with the PAC is, yes, we're also here to entertain, but through that programming, how can we instruct, expose people to things they don't know, allow people to grow? Sometimes the comments come back, oh, we've seen these artists before. Yes, but people also like to see artists that they know well. And then, like, we just had a group come in, Hot Club of San Francisco. So jazz, swing band, and people were stunned. They were like, this is one of the best groups we've ever heard. But, we didn't fill the hall because it was unknown. So I like to make that balance between what we do know and what we don't know. Because there's always, at least in my mind, there's always room for us to grow and experience new things. So, it's finding a balance between what's entertainment, what's educational, what helps people grow in the arts, and providing those opportunities for our students. And so, we balance the calendar between the main stage artists that are brought in, and with our own groups. So the Performing Arts Department has many concerts through the year. And we schedule those strategically, because of midterms, finals, things like that. But we try to incorporate, so when we do a big show, say Messiah or we need a backup choir for a certain artist. We try to have our students there as well. So our students are part of that process. They're learning, they're growing. And so programming for me becomes, that balance that we have achieved, I think, between, bringing in big artists from the outside and making sure our talent are growing and being on stage as well. And then for me, it's always finding that balance between what I mentioned, which is what we know and what we don't, because I go to these conferences where I attend showcases. I go to New York, and then on the West Coast, we have these conferences at different cities, and finding that new talent and encouraging new talent by bringing them here, and exposing again our people to different sounds, different types of performances. Collaborative is also, I think, a fabulous thing. Like we have Ballet Victoria. We've developed a great relationship with them from British Columbia. And, we like to integrate. So when we did Carmina Burana a few years ago, so it's a vocal work, but we put ballet to it. And so, that kind of experience, now our students are having that cross-discipline experience and our audiences too. And people were just, again, stunned, like, I've never seen that done. We've heard the orchestra play, we've seen the choir sing Carmina, but we've never seen it combined with ballet. So again, it's finding those opportunities for how do we collaborate, how do we keep spinning different types of works, and how do we give that experience to our students and to our community that's fresh and new.
I think a good example too is Let the Season Begin.
Yes,
which you have every other year to kick off the holiday season,
right.
And that integrates the symphony, the orchestra, the music students here,
correct,
with guest soloists coming in.
Right.
So you have headliners, you have local interest, and it's all kind of spun together.
Exactly.
One of the things that's also a challenge on top of that is when you're planning a season, there's a lot of boxes to check in terms of you touched on one with what's familiar versus what's challenging.
Right.
But also you have to go big and small. You have to go country and rock and roll. You have to go classic and contemporary and cutting edge and all of that. So I imagine it's quite a balancing act to put a season together.
It is, because at the end of the day, we also have to function within a budget, make sure that budget works. And we do analyze very closely what are ticket sales, how are we marketing, how did that show work out, what were expenses, so there is a business mindset to what we do. We don't just do it because, I like these 20 artists, they're coming. We look at what it's going to cost us and how it's going to sell too. So we do take those into consideration carefully while balancing. Yes, and I always say it's the 3 C's: country, classic. No, it's not classic. Country, Celtic, and Christmas.
I forgot
it's
about the Celts.
It's not so much classic, even though lots of our listeners...
you can't forget the Celts this time of year.
No, you can't.
They won't lay it.
And it's not that our folks don't like classical music. We have many who love that. We do have the Yavapai Symphony Association, and they bring in orchestras. So we don't try to compete with, some of that programming that's really outside of what I do. But yeah, country, Celtic, and Christmas are big sellers in Prescott.
That's great. And I don't want to let any of this go without talking about, because I think this is really innovative, the Cabaret series, which kind of reinvents the that big stage as a jazz club or a close quarters nightclub. Tell us a little bit about the genesis of that and the type of artist you bring in there.
Sure. So while we love our big hall, 1,050 seats, some artists are not going to bring in 1,000 folks. Not even 500. And so, with an unknown artist who's, in the early part of their career that we want to feature, I had the idea, and it's been probably 8 or 9 years now, to why don't we turn the stage into the actual venue, because we don't have a smaller venue on campus to perform in. And so we said, okay, let's try this. We'll call it the Cabaret Series. And we'll have artists, whose fees are not so high that we can put 120 on stage, up close and personal. We can have food, desserts, drinks, and just make it into a much more intimate setting. And so people love it. We just had one a couple of weeks ago with Sandra Bassett. She's a fabulous singer from Phoenix, and we sell out. So we have put 120 people on the stage with our little cafe tables and have food and drinks, and they get to be right with an artist. And so, yeah, it's a whole different feeling to actually be together in that same space rather than they're somewhere up on stage and you're, sitting 20 rows back.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's gone extremely well. And, yeah, it's one of the most favorite things that I do on stage.
Yeah. And the performers rise to it, too. I remember watching, I think the Brian Chartrand Quartet
yes.
played that.
Yes.
And they just loved having people in so close and being able to look at the faces and make jokes with people. There's a lot of biplane. So it's a completely different atmosphere. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're continuing that. Tell us a little bit more about the Performing Arts Department and the students and the growing infrastructure you use to create musicals like Singin' in the Rain or Anastasia or Fiddler.
Sure.
Because you've increased your capacity in technical theater in the last couple of years too, to kind of keep up with this, so students can get a certificate in technical theater as well.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have a huge tradition of choral music, instrumental music with our choirs, our bands, our jazz bands, our orchestra. We have always, for over 30 years, had a vibrant program in choral instrumental. And so when I came, we looked at starting a 2-year degree in performing arts, so to use the disciplines of music, theater, and dance. And so that came about, and because students were asking for it. Students were here saying, "Oh, we wish you'd have musical theater classes. We wish you would do more." So, right when I came, we were looking. The faculty before were looking at a degree, and at starting musicals. And so that was kind of my passion. So I jumped in, and we had the 2-year degree, and then started slowly building up to the big musicals. Part of that then became the demands, and how do you build big sets? So we were kind of building. The PAC had an outside porch close to the loading dock, so we started building sets outside. And then, with costuming, it was, where can we go? We had a closet with costumes, but we now need to construct all these costumes.
Right.
And so, the building went through a redesign about 6-7 years ago, and at that time, the administration had said, because we were art and music in the same space, and so they looked at if performing arts was going to launch and grow, we would get the whole of Building 15, which is what happened. So art moved, and part of art moved, and we basically took over the building. So now we have a great costume shop, we have a prop shop. And then, because we were still building sets outside, sometimes in the snow, the administration saw the need and saw how the program was growing and said, "Okay, let's look at what we can do to build a tech theater shop." And so through a legacy gift from a generous donor, we had at least half of the money available to start. And so we looked at an independent structure, and then we looked at building on the PAC. And so during COVID, towards the end of COVID, we built onto the side of the PAC, and now have a great tech theater shop where we build all the sets. And at the same time, we launched the tech theater certificate, which has been great. So, one of the things that we want for our department is to give the students, hands-on. Because honestly, most of the time in the business, the few get to perform, and a lot get to be on the sides and be in a supportive role. Right. So we, within our program, we give our kids the practicum experience, which is, practicums in costuming or in lighting or, backstage props. And so we built that into the curriculum, and it's also part of that tech certificate to train them up. And to launch them into the workforce. We always need the help here, so we love it when our students stay on and become staff. But with Vegas just up the road, that's one of the biggest places to put them into the industry. Sure. And so it's been a real joy to have that tech theater shop and the tech theater program.
Yeah, and for technical theater artists, for costumers, as well as for musicians, singers, dancers, actors, you can learn a lot in classroom circumstances, but there is no substitute for doing a show.
Right.
And I think that's where the bulk of the lessons are. Correct. Is just in the doing. Correct. Because unless you learn how to combine it with other disciplines, you're not going out into the world really properly educated.
No, absolutely. And, because we have such a great stage, and it's really, artists come here and go, wow, this is better than XYZ in, the major cities. Because we have such a great facility. You're right. Our students get to actually do hands-on with big artists, if they're working backstage with the PAC, and get to work our shows, the department shows and the musicals, which, and I'll tell you this, Michael, this is has always been my goal, and it happens, which is our students leave and go to a 4-year so they can get their bachelor's. And I promise you, so many within 1 to 2 months text us and say, we had no idea what Yavapai College has given us.
I've heard that as well. I've heard that from some of them coming back.
And they're in big universities because they're not getting the individual attention that we give them. They're not getting the quality of the program. They're not getting the quality of the facilities. They're not getting the opportunities to actually do hands-on. And so, I love hearing that. And I know we're talking about it because Yavapai College is moving towards 4-year degrees. I'd love to see our performing arts move to that 4-year because our students stay. Honestly, most of our students stay at least 3 years because they want to be here. They love what they're getting. And until they leave, they don't actually realize they're getting an excellent education here. And so we are providing those opportunities, through the department. And like you said, Michael, through those experiences that they might not get that somewhere else.
Right. And, I was working just this week on a piece on Julia Woolsey.
Yeah.
Who was in Jane Eyre. Right. And was in Hello, Dolly.
Right.
And next week she opens in a featured role on an off-Broadway play.
Right.
And I had a great conversation with her, and she said wonderful things about the Performing Arts Department. She said something that I really liked. She said, they tell you to reach for the stars, and then they show you how to get there. And she is not the only art. Ariel Cunningham last year won a scholarship to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Right.
So we see these folks in or some of the lucky ones in the newspapers or on the websites or most importantly on the stage, and I think that's a great proof of the education they're getting here.
Absolutely, it is a thrill when they go on. We currently have 2 students, even one of our vice president's sons, at Berklee College of Music in Boston. Right. So our students are transferring. Another one of us, our VP sons, he's down at the U of A getting his music degree. Just heard yesterday, Anya Valdez, she's a viola player in my theory class, and she's got into University of Denver, the Lamont School of Music. I mean, that is a tough school to get into. I used to live in Denver, and I know the quality program it is. So our students are really... and we have many more who have been able to transfer into top-notch institutions and who, like Julie, are really making their way. Julie at 19 left for New York and decided that she wanted to pursue her passion. She was just going to give it a go and see what happens. And she's had numerous opportunities to perform in different plays. And now she has this launch of this new off-Broadway play next week. And it's a thrill to see. It really is. I mean, that's why we exist. It's that transformation of lives and seeing them take what we've given them and just run with it. And that's a joy, Michael. It's real joy.
It's a tough business. And it's hard. I think it's tougher than it was even a generation ago. Yeah. And what do you do to equip students to be prepared for that? After they learn all their lessons, they have their projects, they develop their skills. What do you do to prepare them for that next step?
For me, Michael, the biggest thing about working with students who want to pursue a career is, how driven are they? There are different levels of talent. We all have, different gifts. It doesn't have to be music, but if you're in the performing arts, it's either dance is your thing, or you're going to be an actor, or you're going to be a singer, or you're going to be all of them. And so for me, it's the drive and it's the passion that they have to really succeed. As an instructor, I can instruct and I can encourage and I can mentor and I can demand. I can do all those things, but unless that student really wants it, they're the only ones who can achieve it. And so, Julie said, we encourage and we want them to reach for the stars because that's what I believe we do here. I think we're very visionary and very forward moving as a college. I know our president and the VPs are as well. And so being in an atmosphere where you are encouraged to do that, I think is primary. Mm-hmm. Rather than, oh, you'll never make it. It's too competitive. After COVID, we don't have opportunities. Well, yeah, it is competitive. Mm-hmm. And after COVID, the opportunities are not quite what they used to be.
No.
But if you have the passion, and that's why I think Julie's a great example, because she said, I want to do this. I love this. I want to act. I want to sing. I want to, whatever I can do in the performing arts, whatever I can get into. And she made it happen herself. We gave her the tools. We equipped her. We gave her, those opportunities that she could engage here. But I couldn't launch that for her. She's the one who had to move to New York. Mm-hmm. So, it's working with those students who have the fire, I think is what I call it, that desire to excel and exceed, their peers. That's what it really takes.
That's what it comes down
to. And that's the joy. I mean, when you work with a student who is super motivated, who really soaks in what you're teaching, and then has that fire to take it and use it. That is such a joy.
That's great. You mentioned COVID, and I want to talk a little bit about that because I want to talk about how it. COVID. I talked to producers at other theaters and performance venues. Every single one of them has a COVID story.
Sure.
And it's either how they have come back or how they are still struggling. And it seems that the Jim and Linda Lee Performing Arts Center as a production venue is coming back nicely. But the recovery seems to be slower than I think anybody expected. Can you tell us a little bit about the Jim and Linda Lee PAC's journey back from COVID, what you had to do to reassure local audiences, what you had to do to programming, and how that's going?
Sure. Now that we're on, a few years past it, I almost say to myself, did that happen?
Yeah.
Or what happened?
Yeah.
The great thing about Yavapai College and our administration and our president is that, we did not have one misstep during COVID. We did not let one faculty staff member go. Mm-hmm. Our salaries were paid. We had the assurance from our administration that we were strong and that we would survive, and we did. Mm-hmm. So, absolute kudos to Dr. Ryan and her team for giving us that security. So many institutions did not have security through COVID. And so, yes, we came back slowly. We came back very cautiously. And yes, we put in a new filtration system in the PAC because everyone was worried about how do we get clean air. We did do that. We had our safety protocols, we had our masking, and we followed the CDC very closely as an institution. And so we made, I believe, very balanced and best choices for a very difficult situation.
Right.
So we started slowly. What we did do, Michael, which I love and I would like to see us get back to. We started our Concerts on the Green series.
Oh, in Prescott Valley?
Yeah, down in Prescott Valley, right outside the chamber. There's that beautiful outdoor space. And so we did offer concerts that summer of, I guess that was 21. And it was, because we could be outdoors and we didn't have to get crazy about being too close. It was a huge success. And people really gravitated to that experience. Because we'd been so hungry, we'd been locked up for almost a year and a half, right?
Right.
And not allowed to be together in large groups. And so that really kicked off that feeling of we can get through this. We can survive COVID. Mm-hmm. We can survive this, whatever this new way of life was. And then, slowly get back to being indoors again, which we did do. All arts institutions have weathered the storm in some ways, some have not, but the ones that are still, strong, we've had to modify, which means what works or what's what I call right sizing for where we are in our communities. Mm-hmm. In other words, to say, well, we were always at 100% capacity. Well, now We might be at 90% or 80% and making that adjustment for what that means. You know, a lot of people did move during COVID from Prescott. Yes, lots of new people have come back or moved into the vicinity. But, you know, we've lost a lot of donors. And some people have just been very cautious about what they come to see. In other words, the mentality before COVID was, you know, we do a pick six. So if you get 6 shows, you get a discount, you get special benefits, you get to choose your seats early. You know, there's different incentives in doing things like that. And so, you know, doing a pick six was, I mean, our numbers before COVID, people just loved the whole concept of what it meant to buy 6 shows. And then they would add. People would say, well, you know, I did my pick 6, but I want to see these 2. So I'm coming to 8 shows this season, which is, that's what you want. You want
absolutely.
The vibrancy, the love of the programming, and just the joy of coming to shows. What's happened with some of my regulars is they're not doing pick 6 anymore. They might do pick 3, or they might choose the 2 that they know they really want to see, and they're going to wait and see what life is like, you know, 2 months, 3 months from now,
and that's
before I buy another seat.
Right, and that's not programming based or facility based. It's everyone. I find myself. I don't know if you find yourself rediscovering or reprioritizing what's important as an audience member. How often do I want to go out? How big is the place? I don't think in 2019 any of us ever thought we'd be concerned about recirculated air or something like that. You know, it really is it's a recovery, as you said, from those places that have survived, but it is a slow and hard-earned one, getting your way back so that people can audiences can expand their comfort zones.
Yeah, you're right. And just being more selective, you know, currently we can talk about, you know, we have to pay $7.99 for a dozen eggs, you know, or higher. And so, you know, when things shift, what does that mean? You know, and I'm just using the eggs as a small example. But finding the new normal, and we've used that so much now, is what is that new normal and what does it mean? You know, we did try, you know, doing streaming programming during COVID. It didn't work. People didn't want it. No. Not in our area.
Yeah.
And so we dropped it, and most places have. Why? Because the arts, you need to be in person. Yeah. I mean, I can watch something on the screen too, but there's nothing like being in the space and feeling the energy and the applause and the emotion that comes through a crowd.
Right. But I think the outdoor concerts are a good example of creating around an obstacle too.
Right.
Because if people are concerned about, you know, the enclosed space, you go to the unenclosed spaces and you explore that.
Right.
And I think that's a great way to respond to a constriction like that. I hope we see more things like that. I guess I want to, as a kind of final question, I'm intrigued to find out. You were saying at the top of the interview how as a department you're all very forward-looking and you try to dream big. So the natural question becomes, what's next? and when I saw the Performing Arts Center building on a wing for the tech shop, I was thinking, they're going to do Miss Saigon or something, you know, and I'm like, oh boy, so look for someone to build a helicopter there or something. What do you have on the horizon that you can tell us about at this point?
Sure. You know, my sister lived in Ashland, Oregon, and Ashland, Oregon is the home to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival.
Great place.
So, you know, visiting her for years and attending performances, seeing their venues, they had 3 performing spaces, and seeing their programming. You know, it grew from a summer festival, you know, where they started small. You know, a weekend, 2 weekends, a month. And suddenly their season started in February and went through October. Now, of course, it's changed because of COVID. But before COVID, you know, it's a mountain town. It's gorgeous. It's a retirement community. And so living in Prescott, I was like, okay, is this the identical situation? where we're close to, a big city. We have the beauty, we have facilities, we have space. Can we do a festival? And so that has always been my desire. And right as COVID hit, Scotty and I had put together a proposal for a festival. And so we were looking at donors, we were looking at funding through different organizations and grants, and COVID kind of just wiped that out. So, it hasn't been the time to get back to that, but we will be, I think, in the next couple of years. And that's for us to become a destination for the arts and to have a festival. So that there is, where there's something, and we've got all kinds of crazy ideas that we've put together over the years and how it would work. And I truly believe that Prescott could become a destination for the arts, just like Santa Fe, just like Ashland and other centers around this country that have these festivals that become iconic and draw people not just from the state and nationally, but internationally. And so I dream big, Michael.
That would be great.
That's a dream of mine, is could we see a dynamic festival that would truly place Prescott on the international map?
That would be terrific. Well, keep dreaming big.
I will.
Thank you so much, Dr. Craig Ralston, Director of Programming and Development for the Jim and Linda Lee Performing Arts Center. And we will check in on your doings, and anxious to hear about your upcoming season, and we wish you well for the rest of this one.
Thanks, Michael.
And for anyone interested in more information about the Jim and Linda Lee Performing Arts Center, you can call them at the box office, area code 928-776-2000, or visit them online at www.ycpac.com.
Thank you for tuning in to the YCNU podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation today. Don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got someone in mind for our next chat? Reach out and let us know. Until next time, keep exploring, and we'll see you next week.